So here I am, talking about Lonzo again. He just finished a pretty bad game against Dallas. The game before that was maybe his best game of the season versus the Suns. So it's been up and down so far for Lonzo. Similar to his first 2 years, Lonzo has had an awkward start to the season because he's already been in and out of some games. I think there was like a sickness in there or an injury or something. I mean, he played the first, 8 games, and then he sat for about 6, played 3, sat for 2, and now he's played 3 since. So it's going to be tough to really get in a groove, especially when this is a team of guys who haven't really played together. I mean, you compare last year's Pelicans roster to this one, and it's very different, with Ingram taking the most shots, and I mean, that's fine. He's been very good, but it's just a weird adjustment, especially for a guy like Lonzo. And even as someone who is on the Lonzo train, I understand his limitations, and I understand it can sometimes be kind of tough to really find a specific role for him because he isn't a good enough shot creator, shot maker, or ball handler to have the ball for the entire game. His pick and roll stuff is bad. He's consistently been in the bottom percentiles of all that stuff, but I've always appreciated his defensive versatility, his on-ball defense. Granted, his defense has actually not been very good this season. Hopefully he can pick that up. And then the playmaking and just the smarts and the fact that the Lakers were always a better team with Lonzo as opposed to when he wasn't in there. So anyway, how does that all make sense in this Pelicans team? Well, I think Lonzo needs to take it upon himself to be aggressive because there are way too many times where he just kind of floats around, you know? He does a little bit of the Ben Simmons thing where he dribbles it up floor, he'll pass it off to somebody else, and then he's just kind of chilling. Now, his 3 has been better this season. It's been up and down, and he occasionally takes some bad ones early in the shot clock, but against Phoenix, we saw him shooting some corner threes, and I think that can be pretty good. I mean, up to this point, I think it's fair to believe his shooting is definitely better, but also he can be like a corner three-point shooter, hopefully. And that's a lot better than what it was with him as an off-ball player before this, even as a dude who would cut and attack the glass occasionally and things like that. But I still think it comes back to the aggressiveness with him. Now, in the half court, it might be a little awkward because he's not a great ISO player, which, I mean, he should probably work on his handle a little bit more so we could break down defenders like that. But he did still have a couple of drives against Phoenix where he was very quick with it. He didn't, like, dribble around for a few seconds and then try to attack. He did also do that at least one time in overtime or something, and it was a turnover. So, you know, too much aggressiveness is a thing, definitely. But he just needs to be able to beat his defender sometimes. I mean, that's really what it is. Because if you can't do that as a guy who needs to have the ball as much as Lonzo does in order to really, really be effective, I know he does other things well, then it's just going to be tough for you. Now, as far as how can the Pelicans and Alvin Gentry help him out with all of that, well, I think you could attempt some off-ball things with him where he's getting a screen coming from the corner and then he's kind of cutting to the basket or something. I feel like you could also have him set some screens. Hopefully he'd be a willing screener and like actually kind of all right at it. I feel like you could also try something where Drew brings the ball up floor and then Lonzo kind of gets ahead of steam and then Drew just passes it to him and then that kind of just gets Lonzo going towards the basket already. Now, granted, in a perfect world, it would be great if Lonzo could just beat defenders off the dribble consistently with some really, really good handles, but up to this point, he just doesn't have that. You know, he doesn't have the handles of a Harden or a Dame or whoever. Or maybe he does, but his jump shot is just so non-threatening that it doesn't really open up that much of his game, you know? I mean, his pull-up numbers continue to be bad. I know it's only been 14 games this season, but even before this year, you know, you'd think his floaters would be something to really work on, but maybe he's attempting to get better at them, but it hasn't been good at all. His form is not one that really leads to pull-up jumpers, because it would just be super awkward for him to stop on a dime and shoot it the way he does. On top of the fact that again, he's not like he's beating defenders off the dribble or in screens consistently. Now, looking at some lineup numbers for Lonzo, I don't know what to make of them, really. I mean, again, he hasn't played every game, so that's going to make it a little tougher, smaller sample sizes and stuff. You know, his most used lineup has been terrible, but he's had a couple other ones that have been pretty good, and the constants in those lineups are like Drew and Ingram, whether they're good or bad lineups. So I don't know. I don't really know what to make of those, to be honest. I will say the Pelicans' offense is perhaps not exactly structured, is one way to put it. I think Gentry is just kind of letting him play a little bit, and you could argue that Lonzo is not totally set up for that type of thing. But at the same time, it's like, how much of your offense do you really want to cater to a guy who, for as much as I admire his defense and his playmaking and his team-first attitude, has not been that great up to this point in his career? Even if the Lakers were still a better team with him than without him. The record with him, it was like, with him they were 50-50, and without him they were really negative. It was something like that, so... You know, there's a chance that those numbers are just fool's gold, but when I was watching those Laker games, seeing all the little things Lonzo would do, whether it's, hitting some guy in the corner really fast, or a lead pass, or a pass to an assist, and then, of course, what he was doing on defense, that's a big thing. His defense needs to get better this season. I mean, if he can get back to at least being pretty good, his defensive potential is very high, but as of right now, he's just got to get to being back to above average. And then you can not force the issue with your shots, and you can be good on corner threes, and you can just find those seams as a passer, because he can still do that, even if he isn't, getting into the teeth of the defense all the time. That can be a nice, 13 points, 6, maybe 7 assists if things are going well. Solid 4 or 5 rebounds and not horrible efficiency on top of being a damn good defender. That's a nice player. Now, is it Jason Kidd, which is what I said like 2 years ago with Lonzo? No, but there's a chance. There's a chance the expectations with Lonzo just need to be taken down a little bit. That doesn't mean he still can't be a very positive player who can have a long career and be beloved by teams and coaches and people who invest too much of their thought process into the NBA, like myself. But there's also a chance that, and I gotta face this as someone who has been riding the Lonzo train, there's a chance that he's just not that good, which is not a reality that I am willing to live in. So I am riding on the Lonzo train. If the ship is ever going to go down, I'm going down with the ship, no doubt about it. But I legitimately do believe there's an avenue for Lonzo to be good on this Pelicans team. Of course, Zion is not here, and there were definitely more than a few Lonzo to Zion alley-oops in the preseason, so I'm holding out hope, man.